inspiration, I suppose, really came from wanting to write a book for my two boys, because I didn't get to see them as much as I'd like, and that was basically my way of connecting with them and being able to somehow write down things I wanted to say to them. If you're going southbound on the 419 towards the M4 and you look up at the hills across what they call the Old Ridgeway, and you look up, there's a clump of trees which from a distance to me looked like a sleeping dragon. And I thought, that could be quite a fun story. I'm not entirely sure what it would be about, but it would have a dragon in there. And so it does. It's even in the title. The clue is in the name. That was kind of the inspiration for it initially. And then I started thinking about local history, about what Swindon was called many, many years ago, and how it came about. And I thought that would be quite fun if I can make the book entertaining but educational at the same time. Both boys are very, very curious about stuff. So they've read the book and they're already asking me lots of questions. Are we really related to Merlin, Daddy? No, no you're not. Bless them. No. But in the book, yes you are. Oh, I was writing books as a kid. So I started off writing books. Fun enough, it was time travel again. It was centered around a character called Eric, and he had a time machine, and it was kind of educational, and he would use his time machine to go back to, it would help with his homework to go back and see certain historical events for himself. And it was fine. I actually submitted a couple of books to a company called Scholastic Books many, many years ago, because I had a lot of books by them and I enjoyed the stuff that they were pumping out. So I decided to give it a go, and I sent a book into them called Eric and the Vikings. I did hear back from them. It wasn't negative, it was very, constructive. But nothing came of it. But then of course came a film with the same name. Luckily for them, the plot is not the same. Otherwise we'd be having words. But yes. Luckily, I'd worked with a few people where they had done self-publishing before, and I was fascinated by that. So I looked into that to see how easy or difficult it was. And so I thought, well, that's okay. You can do it as a Word document, as a PDF, whatever. I just started writing it with the one hand that I've got still working. Obviously it's mighty slower than using both hands, but it didn't work too badly. I did consider the option of using the dictation service that I've got. I use a Chromebook for writing, so that works very well, but unfortunately the dictation system didn't really keep up, and I think that I was too bothered with trying to put in grammar and things like commas and semicolons wherever needed, speech marks and things like that, as I was going. And because I was concentrating on that too much, I then lost track of where I was. It was far easier, I found, to do it by hand, even if it's just the one. So, well, I love the idea of time travel as a sort of a genre or a concept for a story. Big fan of things like Back to the Future and H.G. Wells and all the rest of it. And really, in hindsight, having watched various interviews and documentaries about other authors, they talk about how they would write down their stories and sort of map out how that would work. And they found that very, I didn't. I went the crazy way, wanting to get on with it. I was already enthusiastic about sitting in front of the laptop and getting on with it. So I didn't actually write down a sort of a map of what I wanted to do. I had the idea, I wanted to include Merlin in there somewhere. There was going to be a magical element to it. There was going to be time travel. And yes, anyway, to answer your question about time travel, if you're not writing it down, then it does become a bit of a mental because you then get points where you go, okay, so you don't necessarily want to abide by, there are many rules that have been written down by previous writers about the rules of time travel, which you want to follow it to a certain extent because popular culture has led people to kind of follow that, and that will be in their subconscious. But you don't want to follow it so closely that you end up then getting ideas from things that you've already read or seen. So I had to take on some of the pre-written rules of time travel and, sort of obeying things like paradoxes, and if you did that at this point, the problem with that is if you're doing that in the past, then what you do in the past, if it stops you from the thing in the future that then makes you go back in time, that won't be there anymore. So you have to be very, very careful about what influences the time travel itself. And then you sort of have to agree in your own mind about how they are traveling in time. So like in Back to the Future, the Doc builds a car. In the Time Machine, George builds his own time machine in his basement. So if there are certain things you put in the story that are needed, you have to stick by it, otherwise it won't work for the reader. So, if you've determined that a character is bald and all of a sudden you say they've gone to a hairdresser, things like that. So you have to kind of stick with that. But yeah, no, time travel is a tricky one, because you then start getting, I got very confused with it at one point because I hadn't written it all down, and I thought I had 3 instances of the same character in the same place at the same time. And I sat there thinking about it, going, but that one's come from the future, that one's going to go into the future in a little while and become the one that's come from the future. But isn't there another one that's already there? No, there isn't. That's fine. I kind of figured a way out of it, but luckily I didn't have to put that in. Yeah. So without giving too much away, there is an element of, there's a young man in the story called Will. And there's a sort of an unspoken love story going on between him and Merlin's daughter. And when he returns to the future, which he knows is going to happen, this is the young man called Will, he's going to be returned to the future. He wants to be able to talk to Merlin's daughter whenever he wants. They can talk to each other. It's mentioned in the book, the line about, we've heard of long distance relationships, but long distance over 1,000 miles, not 1,000 years, that's just insane. And so he comes up with a concept where he can provide internet connectivity in the past. So in order to do that, I had to come up with a solution to it myself. Now, whether this would work, I don't know, but the theory is sound. I would love for maybe one of these, what's the program called where Mythbusters. I would love for them to take this up and go, I'm not entirely sure how they would prove that it's worked. That's something else for them to worry about. But for someone to actually come up with a way of giving internet access to the past would be hilarious. The only problem that you then have is that if they then have the ability to connect to something like Wikipedia, because their internet access is actually based purely on the idea that they are connecting to an internet connection which has a date stamp of modern time on it. So if they're able to then access 21st century Wikipedia, for example, they'd have access to unbelievable knowledge that they should not have for many, many centuries, and that could get very awkward. So yes, but anyway, he sets it up and they're able to talk to each other, and Merlin is able to communicate with another character that is in the present day, in the 21st century here, because they end up compiling a book together. So that's very handy, and they can talk backwards and forwards. So yeah, it's a fun idea. I'd love it to be real. Yeah. Well, it was originally written for my boys, obviously, and they liked it. It would be great if other kids got to read it as well. I mean, I'm very lucky. Both my boys are very good at reading. I've kind of engineered it knowing what their capabilities are, if that makes sense. It has various subjects in there that I know are familiar to them, and so I knew it would work for them. Hopefully it would work for other children as well. My boys are 10 and 6, So I think that sort of age range up to sort of early teens. I think after that, I don't know whether a sort of older teenage children would become slightly bored with it if they're not overly enamoured with the subject matter. There goes another B. No, that'd be nice. As I say, I wrote it for them initially anyway, and I just wanted to see how people reacted to it. I've had a few people have read it. There are a few adults that have read it as well, and they enjoyed it. It's got stuff in there that I know children would appeal to them. So they've got time travel, they've got Merlin, they've got magic, they've got knights and a dragon. There's lots of animals in there, they all talk, so that's quite fun. And I've decided to make it, this first book, one of several. I'm not entirely sure how many. I've got ideas for further books, so hence them being called the Merlin Chronicles, because I have an idea that they will all have Merlin in them. The second book certainly does, and go from there. Yeah. They're going to want to know why.
Yeah.
Why is he typing one-handed? I mean, well done, but you know, is it a left-right thing? Are you dared? There are various bees flying around that look like little zeppelins going along. Mm. They're big, they're fluffy, and they're just they might not work on paper, but they work up here. So I'm just going to adjust myself a bit. One wrong move and I end up in Chichester. That's fine.